Well, would you believe it? Yeah. Well, wasn't that amazing how it stopped very quickly?
Well, yeah. It's as if the yo-yos actually kind of counter the rotation of the.
Sure,
Yeah.
and they spin off instead.
It's just all the momentum of the rotation is within the yo-yo.
Yeah, it's as if the spinning motion is transferred from the first object to the yo-yos.
Yeah, amazing. Now that's what I call science.
Isn't that a lovely application of science, applied science?
Absolutely. Yeah.
When we can actually come to understand the credibility of science when it's applied.
And observe it as well.
And observed. Oh, look, well, would you believe it? Of course. Isn't it amazing? Science is so amazing. But
Absolutely.
it's when science goes into all of this fantasy.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where it can't prove anything.
That's right, yeah.
That's when it's very tricky.
Of course. Well, I suppose we better go on and annoy a few people.
Yeah, I suppose we better add.
You can be very intelligent and very good at what you do, and you can still be stupid.
Yeah, well, we're back again. Annoying people with our views and opinions because
loads of people really just like hearing other people's views and opinions.
I don't know why I do that at the beginning, try and whistle.
When you can't.
When I can't whistle. Like that.
Yeah, but it's just mannerisms. People's mannerisms.
Absolutely. It's because all the crowd are cheering that we've got our new upload.
Absolutely.
Yes. Getcha. Yes. Absolutely, of course. So, how are you, Peter? Are you well? Are you well, or are you well?
I'm well. I had the pleasure of walking down the street yesterday, and I saw a Hyundai motor vehicle.
Hyundai, Taiwan, isn't it?
The name of the car.
Hyundai.
The name of the car was Ionic. Ionic, or it had Ionic written on the vehicle.
On it.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, it must be an electric vehicle.
Probably an
Hyundai Ionic.
Ions, get electrolysis, ions,
and I'm thinking,
producing hydrogen.
And I'm not thinking, but there's no proof that ions actually exist.
Absolutely. So you've got all these people wandering around thinking
Driving.
ions, this new word called ion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Driving in their car thinking that ions are powering their motor vehicle.
Absolutely. People can write the word ION. People can draw ions on a board and do all of this kind of stuff. And yet there's no proof that ions are actually true or real.
Yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is the society we're living in.
Man's fabricated world.
Absolutely. So welcome to Man's Fabricated World. And welcome to our channel where we spend an awful lot of time
exploring and exposing man's fabricated world.
Absolutely, of course.
But you would have thought it would be called more of an electron, not an ionic.
But an ion is an electron, but it doesn't travel through a solid material. An ion passes through air, or liquid, a liquid, a fluid.
Anyway,
that's what they think. Anyway,
but the guy's driving his car, dreaming of ions.
Ions, absolutely. Isn't it amazing? So all of these science applications and new discoveries and everything basically change the way people think about something that hasn't changed all their lives.
Absolutely.
Like water.
Water, yeah, hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed all the time throughout their whole entire life. Yeah. The air that you breathe hasn't changed all of the time. All the time human beings have been on the earth, the air hasn't changed.
And one minute, say science could apply a formula to water being H2O, and then 100 years later, 200 years later, they think, let's call it 2H2O. Let's call it something different.
Because it's trendy, it's fashionable. Yes. Science has got to show to people that it is changing, it is advancing, developing. They've got to do that. They can't show to people that science is stagnating and it's not going anywhere.
But they only do that in the head.
They do it in the mind. They
because the water,
do it through people's minds.
the water never changes.
Absolutely, nature doesn't change. The only thing that does change is man's manipulation of it.
And the way we think about it.
Absolutely, of course, and
Yeah, come on.
that's determined by the way other people influence us through education, through television, through media,
yeah.
through lots of other stuff. You know, blah 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 blah. Anyway,
Because you'll always get to an age where you'll think it is just a load of rubbish.
it's just a load of bollocks, isn't it?
I mean, you could have someone who's really well paid, like Bill Gates, for example, and he knows even though he may have quite a lot of valuables in his home,
Yeah,
when he's near on his deathbed,
yeah.
he knows all of that is
Rubbish.
meaningless.
It's meaningless, absolutely. Of
Absolutely
course.
meaningless because it can't save him.
Can't save him from
Can't
dying.
save him from dying.
Absolutely, of course, and that's a fact that we all have to face at some point in our lives, and that
Absolutely.
is we are all going to die.
Especially when he gets older, and he actually he may be incontinent, or he may
Well, he might.
stain his.
Yeah, but he
his
might develop
expensive
develop
chair.
senile dementia or some kind of Alzheimer's and smear shit all over the walls.
He may
You know,
well
he
do.
might go to the toilet and just smear shit all over the wall. Yeah,
Yeah, these are the sort
because
of
he just doesn't like being there.
absolutely because this is real
He's never loved his wife. So what he does is when he wakes up in the bed, he just shits himself and smears it all over the bed sheets
and
you know,
over her.
and over her as well. And she just puts it down to his Alzheimer's. Oh, he's got Alzheimer's. But really, he's just showing disdain for her
Absolutely.
and for the place, for the situation that he's in.
Oh, well, yeah.
You know,
Because if he were a bit younger, he may be like on top of her, strangling her, saying,
Absolutely,
"I've
absolutely.
wasted 30 years of my life with you."
absolutely, of course, yes. A lot of people are like this. You know, time is precious. At the end of the day, that's
Absolutely.
something we can never get back from
Anyway,
life.
Anyway, let's get on.
What's the phrase? Time waits around for no man.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, of course. But so what have we got on for everyone's displeasure?
Well, for everyone's displeasure, we're going to have a look at a yo-yo D-spin because thanks to a few of our subscribers, they mentioned or highlighted the yo-yo D-spin mechanism.
Absolutely,
on the
yeah.
rocket.
So we thought we'd pass it on because it's a very good example of applied science.
Absolutely, yeah. We're going to have another look at a potential rocket hitting a dome.
Hitting a dome.
We're going to have a look at RGB and white light. Yes, we think white light. But without white light, you have no RGB.
You have no RGB.
And you
Absolutely.
can't make white light from RGB.
Absolutely. And I'd
That's
really
how
like to
you-
see some proof from somebody that RGB makes white light. You can make white light from RGB. I'd really like to see some proof.
So we're going to have a look at that, and we're going to have a look at this. And you thought you could date carbon-14.
Absolutely. Well, I tried dating carbon-14, but I turned it down and got myself a pizza instead.
Absolutely, because if you think you can, well, carbon-14 is your new girlfriend or it's your new,
Absolutely.
Your new
Carbon-14.
depending on which kind of way.
Be alright if he was a
inclined.
paedophile because it would be carbon-14, 14 years of age.
Oh right, yeah, that's
There you go, that's carbon-14. Whereas Jimmy Savile when you need him.
Oh, right, yeah. So we're going to have a look at that as well. But with the carbon-14, we have to mention that we will be talking about carbon dating. No,
Carbon
not that
dating.
kind of
Radio
dating.
carbon dating.
And
That's when you tune into your FM
no, that's,
or your
that's-
AM.
but it is quite a comprehensive field of study. I would
Absolutely.
say.
Yeah, radio
That's what it
carbon
is.
dating.
And we have actually come across. This is the first time we've actually come across something that actually does actually make sense.
Yeah, it kind of it does make sense in it. Yeah,
There are flaws
it's
with it.
plausible. There are flaws with it,
Flaws
but
with it.
on the basis, the understanding is quite good.
Yeah, so we're going to.
Quite good. Which is amazing. This is the first time on our channel that we've come across something that we think in mainstream is kind of acceptable.
Although,
Kind of.
so we're going to spend quite a bit of time on carbon-14 because we've got to get through a lot of information about carbon dating anyway.
And then Dickie Bird. Was it Dickie Bird?
Oh, and Admiral Bird, we're going to
Dickie
just go. We've got to mention why we thought he stayed in a weather station for 5 months.
Yeah.
during the winter months in Antarctica
Yeah, David
on his
Cameron.
own.
David Cameron asked us, well, thought you were going to do it and you never covered it.
Yeah,
So
so
we'll have to cover it now.
yeah, so well, let's do it now.
So let's do it now. Let's have a little look at Dickie Bird. Dickie
Dickie
Bird. Let's have a little look at Dickie
Rear
Bird.
Admiral
Rear Admiral, yeah. Absolutely.
Richard E. Byrd.
And he was a Rear Admiral because he couldn't tell the difference between his front and his back.
Was asked from his.
Absolutely, of course. But we showcased this video here. Hello, calling Richard Byrd, Admiral Richard Byrd.
At the Little America.
At the meteorological station, Richard E. Byrd. It's Little America calling.
Anyway, Richard E. Byrd spent 5 months at this weather station that was
allegedly near the South Pole,
and it was away from their Little America base on Antarctica.
Absolutely,
And he was there on his own, and it was in a little dugout under
During
the
winter
snow,
time.
Under all the surface. It was a little dugout. He's got his own little heater and everything. Can keep nice and cosy and warm.
Yeah.
Reaches minus 65 degrees centigrade at times.
Oh, because he would say...
Hold on. He's not the very best of radio operators, although he does know how to work these meteorological equipment.
Yeah, so he would take daily recordings, wouldn't he?
Yeah, basically. So there he goes. Off he goes, saying goodbye to all his
Bye,
fellow
chaps.
team. Bye,
Okay,
chaps.
chaps. Chalks away,
See you then,
babies.
Dickie. All the best, Dickie. We'll
Off you
see
go.
you in about 5 months' time. Okay, then.
Beep, 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 beep. Absolutely. So off they go. Let's see the farewell wave from Dickie Bird.
There we go.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later. I'm going to get cold now. I'm going to be Captain Birdseye for a while.
Now, this guy. No, who was the other guy? Captain Birdseye. There was some guy, wasn't there?
Captain Birdseye.
Yeah, somebody mentioned about Captain Birdseye.
Oh, yeah. There was an article
We
in
gave
the
him a link.
Washington Post allegedly that mentioned that
Admiral Byrd.
Admiral Byrd went to work for Birdseye.
That's right.
But
Yeah.
Captain, but there's really no link because Lawrence Bird, was it Lawrence Birdseye?
No, it was somebody else.
Yeah, he developed the frozen food industry
industry.
way back before Admiral Byrd
Yeah.
was on the scene, really.
So in our understanding, there's no connection between Admiral Byrd and Bird's Eye Food.
And Birdseye Food. We've not seen enough information.
Everyone's got to remember that Admiral Byrd is the top guy during this expedition.
Yeah, so our opinion on why Admiral Byrd went to this meteorological station is
so that he could stay in his dugout for 5 months on his own in darkness. Albeit, I know he's got lights and everything, but so that he's not exposed to sunlight.
in other words, what our point is that when he returns home and he's interviewed by lots of people, he can categorically state without lying that he spent 5 winter months in darkness, giving people the impression of no sunlight in Antarctica during winter.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Basically, that's why we think but we're going on the assumption that it's true that Admiral Byrd went to this meteorological station
On his own.
because he may not have done it. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know.
And we have to recognise that a lot of people don't like to lie. Remember, Admiral Byrd is going to appear on television. He's going to do press reports for newspapers. He's going to do lots of interviews about his expedition in Antarctica.
Absolutely.
The last thing he wants to be doing is putting into a corner where he's shown to be lying.
Yeah, sure. And
So what he does is that he's short with the truth.
short with the truth.
So
So
that he's in this dugout for 5 months. He only goes up during the night time.
during the night time, yeah,
Where
at
it's
certain
dark.
times, yeah, at the end of the day,
At the end of it, or whenever, so it's always dark. So he can say that he's never been exposed to sunlight.
yeah, for
5 whole
months.
months.
Absolutely, of course. And
To give people, the viewers and all the readers, the impression that the sun doesn't shine in Antarctica
Antarctica.
for 5 months or whatever during the year.
so, if he was in that meteorological station during the day, the sun could well have been out.
Absolutely.
But he would never have known simply because he was in total
He was
darkness
6 foot
and
under.
he had artificial lighting.
Yeah,
for
6
5
foot
months.
under.
Absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
But so
That's our view on it.
that's our view. That's if it actually happened. You know, I mean, you know.
Well, it seems strange how he was doing. He did this, if he did do it, it being under in his dugout.
Yeah, it was strange how he did
and
it
nobody else did it.
when he was the leader of the pack.
But he was the one who's always going to be interviewed.
Yeah, sure. So that's our take on it. And it's just like when they have that Mars thing, isn't it? Like the Curiosity, wasn't it? That was on the Mars, allegedly.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So what they do is that they find this location that looks like the landscape of Mars, and they call it Mars. Okay, they put a tent here and some caravans here, and they call it Mars. That's the location. So they send Curiosity or whatever rover over to Mars. Okay, and it goes on there, and they use it the remote control and everything. So but it's on Mars.
Yeah.
So they're not lying.
And when they're talking within their NASA manufacturing plant or whatever,
Yeah, sure.
they're when Curiosity goes to Mars,
Sure, yeah. Do you
it
understand where
needs
I'm coming?
so that they're able to actually talk to other people about this real place called Mars.
But it's not up there, the planet or the
Yeah.
object that's in the night sky. It's this place on Earth,
Yeah.
because man fabricates his reality a lot of the time.
Which some people would call a deception.
Absolutely, of course. But essentially, they're not lying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not lying.
they're not lying, but they are.
lying.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's only very few occasions that people do actually lie, blatantly lie. It's quite rare actually for people to do that.
Because not many people like to lie.
Not many people like to lie, and people know when they're lying.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely, of course. But there you go. So that's that one.
So that's
over
that
and
one.
done with.
Let's have a look at this yo-yo D-spin.
Let's have a
Click
little
it
look
off
at
now.
this. Yeah, I've clicked it off. Wait there. Let's have a look at this yo-yo.
Here we
Now we showcased this video because a lot of flat earthers think there's a dome. Okay,
Yeah.
they only think there's a dome. Okay,
Got it.
and this rocket allegedly hits the dome. So let's just have a little listen.
Sounded like my stomach. Well, there you go.
There you go. You even heard the ting
Oh, right,
of the release mechanism of the.
it's amazing how the noise can carry through the rocket into the camera, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Into the mic of the camera.
Yeah, sure. Now, we showcased that because a lot of people think that this rocket hits the dome, and you heard the noise of it hitting something watery, or it sounded like that.
Yeah.
Now, we just firmly think that those sounds were inside the rocket, were being made inside the rocket, and the vibration obviously travelled through into the microphone of the camera to be picked up. Okay, that's a lot of fluid could be inside that rocket, like some kind of lubrication fluid or some
Or whatever, yeah.
whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe a fluid to gauge its orientation.
Possibly. Or
I
it could
don't
be
know.
part of the yo-yo D-spin mechanism.
Absolutely, but why it stopped so abruptly? So that's the sound taken care of, as far as I'm concerned. But why it stopped so abruptly is
Because of the yo-yo D-spin.
yeah, is the yo-yo D-spin. A lot of people commented, Low Belver commented, as well as others, on the yo-yo D-spin. Why
Which
it
we
stopped
weren't
so-
aware of.
stopped- we weren't aware of that. I mean, we watched this video a long time ago, but so you can see this clearly spinning round, and you get these yo-yos being deployed, and they reach a certain
it stops.
distance away from it, and then they break off, and then they start spinning.
See-
So the spinning motion is being transferred from the rocket to the yo-yos,
Yeah, basically.
and they spin off.
Yeah.
But the rocket stops. The main point.
Yeah, because there was a Globie who picked up on the flat earthers who were saying that it hit the dome, and like the Globie was saying, no, that's the yo-yo D-spin mechanism.
Why it stops
Why
abruptly.
it stops so abruptly.
Sure, but
So,
there was something else I wanted to mention about this, but I can't remember.
well, you better be quick. People are waiting.
Yo-yo D-spin, yeah, yo-yo D-spin, hits sound, and that's about it, wasn't it?
Oh, there you go.
Wasn't it? Yes, I'm sure there was something else I wanted to
Well,
talk about.
you'll have to
Oh, I've forgotten it now. Oh well, then
pass on that one.
sure. If I remember it, I'll let everyone know.
Yeah.
I'll keep the window open just in case I
But
remember.
anyway, that led us on to another video that we watched about a rocket going through the dome, apparently.
Rocket going through the dome. Yeah. Now we've got this one here. Rare footage of rocket hitting the dome of the Earth with a question mark. The firmament with a question mark. Must see.
At least he's got a question mark.
Now, Natuba TV. Just read the description for a bit. The Earth is flat. Okay, we'll agree with that. And is protected by an invisible barrier called the firmament. Well, that's that. I don't know. It's a possibility, but whether it's true or not is I don't know. A dome-like feature that also happens to be referenced and in the Old Testament, so you know it's real with a question mark. Well, just because it's mentioned in the Old Testament doesn't mean to say that it is real. Absolutely, it's just written in the Old Testament. And if it was written in the Old Testament, how did they know it was there?
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Answers on a postcard, please. Did they send anything up there into high altitude during biblical times?
Well, they may have sent a rover up there.
They could have done. They could have sent Jesus up there. Jesus could have gone up there, had a little wander around, and actually hit the dome on his head.
Yeah.
And then came back down to Earth and landed in the manger.
Well, you don't know, do you?
You don't know. I mean, all of this fantasy stories that you're being told, you really don't know what's going on. There could be pink elephants going around.
Even when you think about it, when you really
flying around the dome.
I don't want to talk about religion in greater detail in this video, but when you think about Moses parting the waters.
Oh, Moses parting the waters, yeah. It's rubbish.
It's absolute rubbish.
I can't remember. Or was it the Nile?
No, it wasn't the Nile. I'm sure it was the Red Sea.
Oh, yeah, well, possibly the Red Sea.
Be. But anyway, how can a human being part the waters of a lake or a river or whatever?
Or when impossible. He turned the rivers of the Nile. I'm sure he turned the rivers of the Nile into blood.
Yeah.
And
it's crazy talk. Crazy.
Yeah, but what could it that but it's all
metaphors.
It's metaphorical. The Bible is a metaphorical book. That's all it is. In other words, this little passage means something. It refers to something, but they don't tell you in the book what it refers to.
Yeah.
That's why it's so confusing, the Bible.
Come on.
But anyway, so let's have a little quick whippy of this, because this is another person who thinks that a rocket or something hits the dome.
But it's got a question mark.
But it's got a question mark, of course. So we don't need the volume. So we see the rocket going up. There we go. Let's see. There it is. Nighttime launch. There we go.
As we know,
hits dome at 320. There you go. Look, he's even telling you that it hits the dome at 320.
But as we know, the rocket goes up.
Absolutely.
And it arcs over.
So we all got to bear in mind that a rocket launches up straight and then it will arc over and then go down range. Okay, but at some point during that flight, it will actually fly horizontally. Okay.
Yeah.
So it'll alter from its vertical position to a horizontal position, and we think, like now, for example, it's in a horizontal position. It's got to be, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because we can see the thrust column, and we can see the thrust column is splayed out all over the place. That's because of the lack of pressure that's acting on the thrust column.
Basically,
So it's no longer accelerating.
Yeah. In other words, there isn't much for the rocket to push against.
There's not much for the rocket to push against. So it's momentum really what's keeping it going.
Basically,
it's just momentum really. So we've got it here. This is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are we ready? And there we go. We got the
drop in the ocean.
Look at that. We've got this like concentric circle, like a water droplet,
Yeah.
Now, the uploader is giving people the impression that this is hitting the dome. Okay.
Now, we have to accept that this video footage is genuine.
Well, okay, yeah, let's assume the video footage is genuine and that ripple is a genuine, observable.
Yeah. See, but my
phenomena.
My first argument with this is that if a rocket's travelling horizontally and it's causing a rippling effect perpendicular to its travel, then that means it's flying into a vertical wall.
Absolutely, yeah, sure. And yet we
a dome that's supposed to be above it.
Yeah, we can't work this one out. You've got the Earth and you've got this dome around it like that. How is it possible this rocket can go like this and hit the dome?
I can't.
Yeah, I can't work this one out. There's got to be some kind of nonsense around this. You've got that guy who we showcased last time who said that even weather balloons hit the dome, and they burst because of hitting the dome.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And now we've got this video here of somebody saying that it's hitting the dome, and to me, there's
with a question mark.
and there's some people who say that there's these U.S. military operations where they fired rockets or missiles up at the dome to try and break the dome.
Oh, right, yeah.
And you think to yourself, are these real stories, or are they just people wanting to create the illusion of a dome? Because it's only an idea, but they want to make it a reality.
Yeah, because it could well be a possibility.
Could be.
That you go up there, if you were able to go up there, and you can go up there and go up higher and higher and higher and higher, higher and higher.
Higher and higher.
Until you get to a point where it just goes black because there's nothing there.
There's nothing there. I mean, it's possible. I mean, who knows? I mean, I don't know. But the thing is that we're not discounting the idea. The dome, the firmament is only an idea. It exists in people's heads.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no evidence or even proof that a dome or firmament actually exists naturally.
Yeah.
Okay, none whatsoever.
Yeah,
None whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
Now, we're not discounting that there's a possibility it could be. There could be one.
Yeah.
But how can you or anyone out there provide any evidence or proof that there is? It's ridiculous. Think about logic. It's beyond the impossible.
Yeah, no, yeah.
So all these flat earthers out there who are going on about this dome, yeah, there is a dome, it's real, there is a dome, it's all about the religion creates the dome.
Creates the dream.
That is, to me, that's just all people they're going beyond reality and they're entering into fantasy.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Because you've got to prove that what you're talking is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
If you can't prove or demonstrate that what you're talking is right, then don't even bother.
But it doesn't help when the next person accepts that there's a dome.
Or just put it across as being kind of true. Or being your opinion. Sorry, just put it across as being your opinion. But one of the things we could put forward as to account for this could be CGI.
It could be high altitude atmospheric conditions.
It could be high atmospheric conditions. It could be a cut or break in the fuel supply.
Could well be, yeah.
Could be, because we are well aware that all this is just show business.
Because if you notice,
rocket launches are all there for show.
Basically, because if you notice that it's splaying out that ripple effect is splaying out as much as the thrust column would have been.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's how wide the thrust column is, basically.
Sure.
So it could be something to do with the...
and we are aware that even SpaceX...
The emissions from the actual rocket itself.
Absolutely. And we are aware that even SpaceX do create some kind of, light show, thrust show for people.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing...
They're taking this is all, like you say,
if you read this, the heaven declare the glory of God. I mean, what's all this about? To me, this is just rubbish. Yeah. And the firmament, I can't read it.
Anyway,
it's just.
And we'll have a NASA T-shirt, won't they?
Absolutely, yeah.
No different.
Another belief system, Yeah. So, but there you go.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So we don't think that shows the dome at all. It doesn't prove or demonstrate the dome at all. I mean, if you think there is a dome out there, up above us, and then leave us a comment, let us know, show us your proof, show us some kind of information you've got that demonstrates there is a dome.
See, the trouble is with the claim that there's a dome covering the Earth, and that is you can't prove it or you can't disprove it.
Absolutely.
So it remains, that's why it's able to remain the way it is.
But people shouldn't put it forward as being true.
Absolutely.
People should just be putting it forward as an opinion or view.
Or belief.
Or a belief. I believe. But then they're going back to the belief system.
Yeah.
They're still in the belief system. They're believing in the globe.
Oh, right,
they believe in space.
Oh, right,
They believe that man will go and land on Mars and live on Mars.
Oh, right,
you're entering into the same shit of the globe society.
Different cover.
Absolutely, same shit, different cover.
Okay.
Absolutely, of course. So let's click that off. I'm quite disappointed that I can't think of the other bit I wanted to
was it about the parachute?
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, sure. If you think about the if you think about the rocket, you know, you've spent an awful lot of money on this rocket. Okay, you're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars or pounds, whatever. The last thing you want to do is it coming back to Earth and breaking up, crashing. And all of that money's gone to pot. So you'd want to ensure that rocket comes down as safe as possible. And one of the best things to do is to ensure that the deployment of the parachute that enables that rocket to come down safely is carried out safely.
Isn't hindered.
So you'd need to stop the rocket using the yo-yo D-spin.
That
Makes perfect sense to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only piece of information I wanted to add.
So that actually makes sense to us. And that's why I was saying, if it didn't make sense, then it would be nonsense. But this actually does make sense.
It does make sense, absolutely. Of course, yes. So there we go.
Rather than it hitting a dome.
Absolutely,
Which doesn't make sense.
Absolutely, of course. Now let's do
RGB.
Let's do the RGB. Now let's have a look. Where are we now? So we don't need that one, do we? I can click that one off, and I click this one off.
How an analog TV works.
Here we go. Now we met this guy before, haven't we? Technology connections. Obviously, like connecting lots of dots. It's this bit here.
He should team up with David Icke, shouldn't he?
He should team up with David Icke, because David Icke likes joining dots, and this guy likes the dots on the TV. So let's have a little listen to this. Now, before we do, let's just set the scene. A lot of people seem to think that RGB makes up white light. Okay, so when you have a bulb, an incandescent bulb, and you run a voltage through the filament and it glows white and it lights up the phosphors, that's if you've got any, and or it just glows white, there's RGB somewhere there.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah.
But it can't be really, can it?
Well, sure. Yeah, maybe what they're saying is that RGB could make up white light.
No,
or it could
either
synthesize.
Either it does or it doesn't.
Yeah, either it does or it doesn't.
But then when you look at, if you had an incandescent light bulb and you painted the glass red, for example, and you switched the light bulb on, then that would glow red, wouldn't it?
That would glow red.
But if you increased the intensity of that bulb,
it
would start getting lighter. Where you can, if you actually looked at the bulb, not that I'd recommend anyone doing that, but you'd see that it's white in the middle.
Yeah, that's why you can see the yellow in the red.
Absolutely, because the red is being faded out.
It's because of the intensity of the
yellow,
underlying white light.
Red, yellow, white.
Absolutely, of course. Because so a lot of people seem to think that RGB makes up white light, whereas we don't think that at all. We think that you need the white light to make the RGB.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Now, this guy, we've already given certain things to support our view. TVs, a lot of TVs are made with a backlight which has your white light. Okay. LCD TVs have a backlight. Yeah, okay. With your white light.
They rely on it.
They rely on that, and they also have your RGB at the front. Okay.
And the OLED TVs have a red, green, a blue,
and white
filters
on the front of the screen. Okay, so there's always the presence of white light. Okay, because if RGB makes up white light, then you shouldn't have you don't need the presence of white light at all, do you?
Yeah,
makes sense, doesn't it? So,
so then that took us on to talking about black and white televisions. Well, black and white television, you only see white, really.
You only see white on
the screen.
On the screen, yeah.
So where's the RGB?
Where's the
black
RGB?
And white television?
Absolutely.
And if it's red, green, and blue make up the white light for a black and white television, why wasn't colour television introduced first? Because that relies on RGB.
Absolutely. Now we watched this little video here, and we came across some information about RCA when they were trying to develop a system that would receive and display colour. Okay, how analog colour TV works, the beginnings. So let's just have a little listen from here, just to set the scene and give everyone an idea.
Turn up a little bit.
The most obvious thing would be to simultaneously transmit 3 separate television images, with each representing one of the RGB channels. A special camera with a beam splitting arrangement behind the lens could send the image to 3 separate iconoscope tubes, each with a colored filter in front of it. Later cameras would use dichroic glass to simultaneously split the beam and filter color. This would cause each tube to only detect light of that color. On the receiving end, 3 separate television picture tubes could receive each of these 3 signals. RCA experimented with just such a system. The 3 CRT displays were tinted either red, green, or blue to match the colors detected by the tubes in the camera. The trick was combining the images together. An optical system similar to that of the camera could recombine the output of the 3 CRTs, but this didn't work too well. Though CRT projection systems would use this approach years later, at the time it wasn't a great option. Besides the fact that each television set using this system would cost at least 3 times as much as an ordinary television, given the fact it essentially is 3 TVs, the resulting image had to be recombined onto a frosted screen, and with the comparatively dim tubes of the time, it just wasn't great. The real trick
In other
would
words,
be to
recombining your receiver
Red, green,
using red, green, blue just didn't work.
Yeah.
RCA tried it and it didn't work.
Right.
Now, if red, green, and blue makes up white light, we can't understand why this didn't work.
Absolutely. Well, it should have worked.
It should have worked. RGB, you've got it. You've got them all there,
Yeah.
but it didn't work.
Yeah.
And notice they used frosted glass screen
Oh, right, yeah. But
because that would have affected the light as well.
yeah,
The frosted glass
makes you
screen.
wonder why they use the frosted glass screen. But then you also have to ask a viewer, like he said, forgot what I was going to say then. That they used red, green, and blue, but they were all dim. It produced a dim image. A dim image. What does that mean?
It lacked
Dark.
intensity,
Yeah, it lacked
saturation,
It lacked intensity. And what gives you intensity?
white light.
White lights.
Absolutely, because a lot of people fail to realise that with when we see colour, okay, there's a number of things that we have or we utilise, and that is hue, that is the colour itself, but there's also the saturation or the intensity of the light. Okay, so if we have high intensity with a hue, the colour will get lighter.
So you'd have greater saturation.
You'd have greater saturation.
And that would be similar to...
I think that's the right way of putting
yeah,
it.
could be.
But if we lower the
That
intensity,
would be overexposure.
sure,
When you take a
overexposure,
photo.
absolutely. But if we lower the intensity, the colour will get darker. Okay, so we need the white light along with the colour, okay, in order to see
the colour.
see the colour. Right. Okay.
Oh dear. It's a bit like this screen here, this image here. I mean, it's white. You can see that it's white. But that's because it's the intensity of the white light producing LEDs.
Yeah,
or
which is at the back of the
whatever
monitor. At
That's
the back of the monitor.
producing, that's passing through the RGB filters.
Absolutely, of course. There's no.
That's why, because the white light is able to wash out
out
colours.
the colours because it's bright. It's
Yeah.
very bright.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's very
So,
bright.
so in our opinion, a white screen is the worst for eyesight
Yeah,
that you can look at.
Yeah.
So whether it's a mobile phone, computer, television, a white
light.
screen is the worst colour because it will make if you were exposed to this. If you were exposed to a white screen for a long period, you'd probably go blind in no time,
Yeah.
and you'd be going,
Well, but why do you think? Well, why do you think blind people have white sticks?
absolutely, of course, it makes sense, doesn't it? Of course.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why do they have white sticks and not black? Because it wouldn't matter what colour they are, would it?
Oh right, sure. Well, some people. Why don't they use guns? Because they can use guns as white sticks, couldn't they?
Well,
That's what happened to a
Guy in Manchester.
guy in
wasn't it?
Manchester. Yeah, the blind man with his white stick on the platform waiting for a train.
Or he folded it up. He may
Oh,
have
he folded it
yeah.
up. He was waiting for
And
his
then,
train.
and then some innocent bystander brings up the police and says, "There's a man on the station, on the platform with a gun."
Absolutely, how ridiculous! This is how people work.
It's mentality.
Absolutely,
People.
and they've been through the education system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the guy actually gets given some grief, doesn't
Yeah.
he?
If he would have, because this is what I know. We're
And then the police
going-
turn up. Dum
Yeah.
dum dum
I know we're going off on a tangent here, but the guy phones up the police. But one thing that they don't do, well, I could be wrong, but one thing the police don't do, and they say, "What makes you think it was a gun, sir?"
Yeah,
On the other end of the phone,
yeah,
what
sure.
makes you think it was? They don't question it. Really? Okay. What was he dressed? What was he wearing? How tall is he? Can you describe him? They'll take it as though the person.
They'll take it that he's telling the truth.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, this is one thing I don't like.
They don't question the people who phone up the police. Well, what makes you think it's a gun, sir?
Absolutely, sure. The police get a phone call, and one thing they do not do, okay, which I think is really bad in this country and probably lots of other countries, and that is they don't do probing questions to basically ascertain whether the person, the caller, is actually telling the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could the caller be wasting our time? Could the caller be saying that this guy has got a gun when he doesn't have a gun and he's got a table leg? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or he's been shopping and he's got a pile of tins from Tesco. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. You're telling us the person's harassing you. Well, what are they actually doing? Oh, they're just walking past your place because they live next door to you. Oh, right, okay. Well, you know, I mean, that's not. Well, we don't think we should send an officer around. Do you understand where we're coming from? It's anyway.
Well, it's crazy people.
Insane, crazy people we're living with on a day-to-day basis.
Because people aren't given a proper education.
Absolutely. But there was a little bit more. So when we do look at this kind of image, okay,
we're seeing those colours lit up by white light.
We're seeing these colours being lit up by white light. If you lower the white light, you'll see more of the red, or you'll see more of the blue, or you'll see more of the green.
Yeah.
You increase that intensity, you won't see any of these colours. That's why you have to look at them under a microscope.
And that's one reason why some people can use old TVs like these and actually put them up to give the appearance of sunlight in a dark place, because it gives out white light.
Oh yeah, because it gives off white light. Because even these old TV screens can be good for lighting.
Yeah,
you know, because that's all they're doing really. I think we don't need to watch. We don't need to watch the other part of this, do we?
Well, we can. Well, we could. We just went on to.
I mean, the guy showed these projectors with the RGB.
Well, look at these projectors. I mean, they're red, green, and blue. Each of these have red, green, and blue lamps in them. But look at the centre of those lamps. They're white because
they all look white.
They're bright. Whereas you can see the colour on the outside.
So you've got a white light source, but you have a filter which is coloured.
Yeah.
You know, but you've got the white light that's already there. So you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure we don't need to play the other bit. The 750 was it?
Well, you can. Well, you can just show an image of a coloured TV tube.
Yeah, because we did get this little image. Now, this is an image of a colour television
tube,
analog tube. Okay, and I mean it's quite straightforward, but it gives you the impression straight away that you've got a blue beam, red beam, and green beam. Okay. Electron beams, your voltage beams, okay, and they are coloured, okay, and it goes through the mask, and you've got phosphor dots on your screen, which is your RGB, okay, and then obviously that gives you your colour picture image on the screen.
Yeah, so someone could look at this and think, there you go.
There's no white light.
There's no white light there.
Absolutely, yes. Somebody after looking at this would say, well, there you go. There's no white light. But you see, the thing is that one thing we'd like to say, and that is, why have a blue beam, red beam, and green beam, and also have your red, green, and blue phosphors on the screen? Doesn't make sense, does it?
Because the blue, red, and green beam should be going straight onto the
absolutely
fluorescent screen.
What we think this...
Why is it a fluorescent screen and not a phosphorescent screen?
Yeah, I know, yeah, it's confusing. That's because it's confusing.
Oh, wow.
But the thing, what we'd like to say, is that the blue beam, red beam, and green beam are all the same light. The only difference is, well, this is just our opinion, okay? It's just our opinion. The blue beam, red beam, and green beam are all the same colour as such, but they're showing different. They're showing a different signal. So they're
basically,
different
yeah.
because of the way it's been sent by the TV camera that produced those beams, those
Basically,
signals.
yeah. And also, we've got to remember that this diagram is been drawn up, designed, fabricated by someone who thinks white light is made up of RGB.
Absolutely, of course. So they're obviously going to put blue beam, red beam, and green beam. But to us, it just doesn't make any sense.
How can have a blue,
Why you need those phosphors of RGB when you've got a blue beam, a red beam, and a green beam?
How can you have a blue beam of electrons?
I know, yeah. This is why this is rubbish.
Crazy.
Absolute rubbish. You know, if you think we're wrong, we'd love to see a demonstration of a red light, green light, and a blue light with no white light ever present, together focused on a subject or something, and you're getting white light. This is what we'd like to see.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And obviously we can replicate as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can duplicate it. So if you've got any information out there that can sort that out, that would be great. We'd love to see it. Leave a comment below, and that'd be great.
Yeah, anyway, get our thumbnail up.
So that's that one out of the way. So let's get the thumbnail up. And you thought you could date carbon 14. Well, apparently not, because you'd be underage.
Right, so okay. So
Or then carbon 14 would be underage.
Oh, right, yeah,
especially in the UK.
and in the US as well.
Not in Spain though.
What about Prince Andrew though?
Their legal
Prince
limit,
Andrew?
I'm sure, is about 13. I'm sure it's about 13 or something in Spain. It's quite low in Spain.
Oh, right.
I could be wrong. It is lower than the
Maybe
UK.
they have more paedophiles in there. I don't know. Anyway, let's not.
No, they
talk
all
about
go to Thailand.
Oh right, yeah.
You know.
But anyway, now this is quite. It's quite a. When you actually go through the theory of carbon dating, it seems quite a very good process.
Well, it seems
understanding.
logical, doesn't
Logical, yeah.
it? It seems logical.
So let's
For once, we've actually found something that kind of does seem to be very plausible indeed.
So let's have a look. Let's have a read about where it all started from.
So yeah,
Carbon dating.
let's click this off. Now it all started from
Well, a couple of people asked us to. Yeti D asked us to look
Yeti
at carbon
and
dating.
some other guy asked us to look at
Carbon
dating.
But it all started with Willard Libby.
Willard Libby, absolutely.
There we
And
are.
after his fame and success, after getting his Nobel Prize, he then went on to produce fruit juices and all this kind of stuff
Oh right, yeah.
for like
Blackcurrant, orange.
absolutely, of course. But you got Willard Frank Libby, was an American physical chemist. No, can you be anything other than a physical chemist?
Oh right, yeah. They're all physical
They're
chemists.
all
aren't they?
physical chemists. It's
You
absolutely
just can't be a theoretical chemist, can you?
Oh well.
Well, you can.
Well,
Part of it
yeah,
is
but then
theoretical.
you can just make up these chemical substances, then, can't you?
But you're always dealing with tangible stuff.
Oh, but a lot of the periodic table are all theorised.
Oh right, yeah.
A lot of them are.
Anyway,
Anyway, noted for his role in the 1949 development of radiocarbon dating, a process which revolutionised archaeology and paleontology. For his contributions to the team that developed this process, Libby was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 1960. Very good. So let's have a little look at. We won't need to do that.
so that
Radiocarbon dating. So
dating.
after the war, Libby accepted an offer from the University of Chicago of a professorship in the chemistry department at the New Institute for Nuclear Studies. He returned to his pre-war studies of radioactivity. In 1939, Serge Korff had discovered that cosmic rays generated neutrons in the upper atmosphere. Right, okay. This is where we could be going. Well, I think we're going into
Dreamland.
This is the fantasy part of it. These interact with nitrogen 14 in the air to produce carbon 14. Okay, so we'll move on. We're going to change over to here and we'll go on to this page, which is the radiocarbon dating, because the information is a little bit more
In detail, more detail.
there's more detail. So, okay, the method, was developed in the late 1940s by Willard Libby, who received the Nobel Prize. Blah, blah. It is based on the fact, that radiocarbon 14, is constantly being created in the atmosphere by the interaction of cosmic rays with atmospheric nitrogen. Now they're putting that as a
Fact.
axiom. It's an axiom
it's
because
given.
it's our understanding there's no nitrogen in the air at all. So carbon being part of the air, whoa, you can forget that as well. To us, it's just a fabrication. That's all. The resulting C14C combines with atmospheric oxygen. Okay, there's no oxygen in the air because in order to make oxygen, you need to compress and concentrate that air mechanically. Okay,
or chemically.
Okay, and then you've got your
Oxygen.
You've got your oxygen. Nature doesn't do that.
Yeah.
So we've just got air.
The only time you've got oxygen is with man's involvement. Although we would argue that there is some oxygen in limestone.
There is some oxygen in limestone. Yes, there's a small amount, but that's all down to calogenation at some point.
Absolutely,
of course. But the resulting 14C combines with atmospheric oxygen to form radioactive carbon dioxide. We're talking radioactive here, okay? Remember, which is incorporated into plants by photosynthesis. Now, we know that photosynthesis is rubbish. Plants do not release oxygen in their natural environments.
After absorbing the carbon dioxide.
They don't do that. You can give a plant carbon dioxide and it will absorb it because it's got no choice. But then you're creating an artificial environment for that to happen.
It's a bit like holding someone's mouth open and force feeding them.
Yeah, basically,
you will have some carbon dioxide.
Or it's very much like putting 10,000 volts across a small little gap in water, in deionized water. And saying, well, of course the water's conducting the electricity.
Between two electrodes in water.
Yeah, between two electrodes in water. Yeah. Well, of course the water's conducting electricity.
No.
They're making it, they're fabricating, they're forcing the issue just to get people, just to build up this whole imagination of bullshit.
Anyway, come on.
But anyway, the resulting 14C combines with atmospheric oxygen to form radioactive carbon dioxide, which is incorporated into plants by photosynthesis. Animals then acquire 14C by eating the plant. When the animal or plant dies, it stops exchanging carbon with its environment, and thereafter the amount of 14C it contains begins to decrease as 14C undergoes radioactive decay.
So it sounds very bizarre. It's
it
all
sounds
tied up.
Wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But the thing is that we would certainly argue that there's no nitrogen in the atmosphere, there's no oxygen in the atmosphere, photosynthesis isn't real,
Nor
doesn't exist naturally,
and cosmic radiation.
And radioactive 14C, carbon 14, we don't think that doesn't exist either. In the atmosphere. It's all manufactured.
Theorised.
It's all theorised to suit an understanding so that when you go to school, for example, you think, wow, man seems to have sussed it all out.
Yeah,
he knows what's going on out there.
Anyway, let's just quickly nip back to the other article on Willard Libby because you need to tie in the fact
this one
that
here.
They synthesised.
Or this one here?
You need to...
Oh, sorry, yeah. So that would be...
they synthesised. Serge Korff synthesised.
Yeah, that was this part here. Yeah, we go on, I'm sure, history, yeah. In 1939, Martin Carman and Samuel Rubin of the Radiation Laboratory at Berkeley began experiments to determine if any of the elements common in organic matter had isotopes with half-lives long enough to be of value in biomedical research. They synthesized 14C using the laboratory cyclotron accelerator and soon discovered the atom's half-life was far longer than had been previously thought.
So they're actually synthesising carbon-14, not actually extracting it from the environment.
Absolutely. But how did anyone know that 14C existed?
Oh, right, yeah.
This is the
thing. Actually manufactured
because
it.
This was in 1939. And then this was followed by a prediction by Serge Korff, then employed at the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, that the interaction of thermal neutrons with 14N in the upper atmosphere would create 14C.
Sounds like they're making it up
It
as they go
really
along.
does sound as if they're making it up, especially given there's no evidence, even in this information here, or proof, that prior to 1939, people knew that 14C carbon-14 actually existed naturally.
So you're getting these scientists who've come up with these dreams, and they get money to fund.
They get
them
lots of money
into their, so they can carry out experiments to see if their dreams, they can make their dreams a reality.
Absolutely, of course. But in
Or a false reality,
Sure.
I should say.
Yeah, we don't need to read this bit. And then you had in 1945, Libby moved to the University of Chicago, where he began his work on radio. They synthesized carbon-14 in 1939, and prior to that, there was no evidence, information, or proof that 14C actually existed in nature.
Yeah, no, none whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
So anyway, let's have a look at what Libby did.
So let's have a little look what Libby did. Now we've got this little bit here, age determinations by radiocarbon content, checks with samples of known age. Arnold and Libby. Okay, this was 1949. And basically, further tests of the radiocarbon method of age determination for archaeological and geological samples. That sounds
Can't see how they can do geological.
questionable. How can they do geological samples? Anyway, have been completed. All the samples used were wood. Geological sample
Samples
being
were
wood. I wouldn't have thought so. Dated quite accurately by accepted methods. The measurement technique consisted in the combustion of about 1 ounce of wood, the collection of the carbon dioxide, its reduction to elementary carbon with hot magnesium metal, and the measurement of 8 grams of this carbon spread uniformly over the 400 square centimetre surface of the sample cylinder in a screen wall counter. The background count was reduced during the latter part of the work to 7.5 counts per minute, which is some 2% of the unshielded background, by the use of 4 inches of iron inside 2 inches of lead shielding plus 11 anti-coincidence counters to... Absolutely. So basically what he did was he got known samples of wood of age.
You'd be better off going to Wikipedia because it has a much better
Okay then.
explanation of what
There we go. Okay, let's go. As well as, so he published a paper in 1946 in which he proposed that the carbon in living matter might include 14C, as well as non-radioactive carbon. In other words, because a lot of people seem to think that carbon exists within our bodies, within lots of organic material. Now, we would argue that profusely.
Profusely, yeah.
And say the only time carbon exists in a plant or anything organic is when you burn it.
Or someone's doped it.
Or somebody's doped that organism, that organic organism, with carbon. Absolutely, that's the only time you're going to see carbon in your body, or a plant or whatever.
Because carbon is a state of existence.
It's a state of existence
where something is free of moisture.
Absolutely,
basically,
yeah, sure.
It's just a bit like bone char.
Bone char.
It's black because there's no moisture in it,
and it hasn't been allowed to fully burn and combust
to turn into ash.
That process has been hindered.
It's very similar if you mix sugar with sulfuric acid. The acid will actually dry out the sugar so much that it will turn black.
It'll turn black and it
will just expand.
Absolutely, of course, yeah. So what did he do? Libby and several collaborators proceeded to experiment with methane collected from sewage works in Baltimore. And after isotopically enriching their samples, which means making them radioactive, they were able to demonstrate that they contained 14C.
Okay.
Carbon-14. Do you think they actually doped it with carbon-14? Probably. By contrast, methane created from petroleum showed no radiocarbon activity because of its age.
No, don't you want to just read the bit about the tombs?
This is Libby and James Arnold, which is what this is. So this bit here, Libby and James Arnold, they wrote this, but they also did this bit here. Libby and James Arnold proceeded to test the radiocarbon dating theory by analysing samples with known ages. For example, 2 samples taken from the tombs of 2 Egyptian kings, Zoser and Sneferu, independently dated to 2625 BC. plus or minus 75 years. We've got to stop there and say, how did anyone independently date them back to that time? I will never know.
Absolutely.
Your guess is as good as mine. If you know how they did it, please let us know.
Yeah.
Anyway, were dated by radiocarbon measurement to an average of 2800 BC plus or minus 250 years. These results were published in Science in 1949. Within 11 years of their announcement, more than 20 radiocarbon dating laboratories have been set up worldwide. In 1960, Libby was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for this work.
Because he's invented an industry.
He's created an industry, which means a business, absolutely. And then it talks about in nature, carbon exists two stable non-radioactive isotopes, carbon-12, carbon-13, and a radioactive isotope, carbon-14. You know, all of that is just rubbish.
Yeah, because how can you differentiate between carbon-12, 13 and 14?
Well, you can't.
How can you?
You can't. Well, you wouldn't be able to differentiate between carbon-12 and 13, that's for sure.
No.
Absolutely, of course. Yes, all of this is absolute rubbish. Okay.
Anyway, let's get on and have a look at the video.
The video
of the woman explaining about
would be this one, wouldn't it? So let's go. Now this is about this woman here is explaining
dating the radiocarbon way.
Yeah, we'll just go through it. Wait there. She's explaining that this is how the carbon-14 is actually made naturally, which is all a bullshit story, in our opinion. Okay, and then she goes on to talk about
that it's all in everything that's plant living.
Yeah, it has carbon-14 in it. Doesn't matter, and the types of things they carbon date are. Wait there. Let's have a look. Oh, wait there. Yeah, the types of things they carbon date are wood,
plant material,
bits of charcoal, fabric, bone, leather, tusks, horns, and all this stuff. And some of the things that they can't date is are stones, rocks and stones. Can't do it. Okay, so carbon dating, they can't do rocks and stones. Okay. Now, here we go on to the good method. This guy sends them a sample of fabric, and he wants to know whether the fabric is a fake, forgery, okay, or the real deal and is very old and very ancient. Okay, so should we pick up what they do with it?
Yeah, go on, yeah.
So let's just play this.
We've got to think about copyright, and just to let you know that we've gone over an hour.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, we'll be fine with it.
Old, or possibly older, but what he really wants to do is make sure that it's not a modern fake. We look at it first under the microscope, and what we're looking for is identification to see if the sample is what it's supposed to be. We also look under the microscope in order to look for any contaminants that have been added to the outside of the sample that we want to remove. The second step in the process is a chemical cleaning of the sample, because what we want to do is isolate carbon that is just from the sample and not from any external contaminating materials. So what you see here is people doing a lot of chemical processes to clean up the sample.
So they're saying as if it's carbon already.
Yeah, they think
the piece of cloth is carbon already.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
But it's not.
Yeah, there's no carbon in the piece of cloth at all.
Yeah,
there's no carbon exists in that piece of cloth.
Yeah,
let's carry on.
In the textile example that we've been talking about, we're going to give it a series of washes with organic solvents, and those solvents will dissolve any greases or fats that have been attached to the sample by people handling it with their fingers. The next step is to convert the solid sample to carbon dioxide, and then to convert the carbon dioxide to graphite for measurement in the accelerator. We load the sample into a quartz combustion tube with copper oxide and a little bit of silver wire. Then we put that combustion tube on a vacuum line, and we pump all of the air out of the tube. When all of the air has been sucked out of the tube, we can flame seal it, and that leaves a vacuum on the inside. Once the sample has been sealed into an evacuated combustion tube It's put into a muffle furnace and heated to 900 degrees. The copper oxide will cause the solid sample to combust, to burn, and will end up at the end of the process after it's been combusting overnight with carbon dioxide and a little bit of water inside the combustion tube. The combustion tube is cracked and the CO2 is transferred through these traps into a small bottle. The first trap is a water trap, and the second trap is where we collect the CO2. The volume of the CO2 is then measured very exactly so that we know how much we got, and then then it's transferred into this small bottle here. The final step in the process is making graphite. What we do is attach this little bottle containing the CO2 to the vacuum line over here, and that CO2 is mixed with hydrogen inside a graphite reaction vessel. There's a small amount of iron powder inside the reaction vessel, which is what we call the catalyst. When the hydrogen and the CO2 are heated to a high temperature, the hydrogen will take the oxygens off the CO2 and deposit elemental carbon in the form of graphite on the iron catalyst. A tiny amount of graphite is the end product from the sample preparation laboratory. And now we're taking the graphite from the sample preparation laboratory into the accelerator room for measurement. Albert Zondervan, the accelerator operations team leader, and his team take over the measurement from this point on.
Yeah, so the only time at which carbon is present is when they heat the sample.
Burned.
When they burn the sample, absolutely, to produce your carbon dioxide.
But even I'm thinking that small piece of cloth can't on its own produce that amount of graphite.
Yeah, I don't think so as well.
So there must be something borrowed from the silver or the copper oxide.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
That combines to form
that helps to produce your CO2.
Well, the graphite.
Well, the CO2 gas, which they then use and react with hydrogen and to produce your graphite.
Because there must
over the lead.
Because there has to be some carbon in silver.
Do you think they actually burn the lead? Burn the iron?
Oh right, yeah. Why do they put the iron in there? They have to heat it up. It has to heat up.
Yeah, they might burn it.
And it stains.
It stains. They might actually burn it. You see, the thing is that we've come to the conclusion that at the end of the day, radiocarbon dating is all about how much your sample can produce carbon dioxide.
Or what they would call carbon dioxide.
What they would call carbon dioxide. Yeah,
what we would call carbon dioxide is a salt acid gas.
Sure. Because
organic things contains salts and acids.
Salts and acids.
Wood contains salts and acid.
Absolutely. Fabric contains salts and acids.
Salts and acids.
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Even coal. Coal contains salts.
And
it contains sulfur as well, which when heated can acidify.
Absolutely, of course. So we all know that there's no carbon, C14, carbon 14 in the atmosphere that we ingest through our food and all this. That's all rubbish. That is all made up and fabricated. But what they are doing is basically determining the age of a sample simply from the fact that when you burn a sample, it will produce X amount of CO2. The older a sample is, the less amount of CO2 that sample will produce.
But I'm
sure that's what they're doing.
The main gist of it. So it's all down to, like you say, the amount of CO2 a sample would produce, and then what they have to do is convert that into a solid, so that they can bombard it with high voltage,
which is what they do here.
Accelerated high voltage, which then would emit radiation that they can pick up.
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's their little sample of graphite is put in this little that
Disc.
little disc there, and then loaded onto this drum, along with other samples.
Yeah.
Okay, and other bits of graphite that have been made without that sample of cloth
So they can use it as a, what's it called?
from the CO2 with the cloth. Yeah,
So they could use it as
a baseline.
Baseline, yeah.
Yeah, and they basically put it in this accelerator, and they bombard it with cesium. Okay, and high voltage. Okay, so they're actually making it radioactive.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically.
And then all they do is that they
Determine how much voltage is emitted from it.
they pick up the carbon 14 to determine basically how much CO2 was contained in that sample, which could then relate to how old the sample is.
Yeah.
That's essentially all they do.
You want to pause the video?
I'm going to. Yeah, that's essentially what they do.
But they actually say in this video that as it goes through the particle accelerator, it's actually separating the carbon 12, 13 and 14.
But how can
And I'm
that be?
thinking, how can that be?
When they're zapping the whole sample with
Voltage.
high voltage.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, cesium, which is radioactive.
well, absolutely, of course.
Radioactive sample.
You know, it's just ridiculous. But the
Yeah, the C14 in all this is, in our opinion, a red herring.
red herring, yeah, sure,
Because it's irrespective
sure, yeah.
whether you have it or you don't have it.
Yeah, the main point is they are gauging the age of certain materials based upon how much CO2 would be given off when it's burned.
And how can they measure the amount of CO2 a substance burns?
You see,
How much CO2 can they measure?
how can they measure how much CO2 a sample has given off? This is why we think they use radiation and radioactivity, is simply because they can get an accurate figure.
But then again, the trouble is
Because
with
they
that-
measure the radiation that it contains
Yeah.
rather than the CO2.
True. But the trouble is with that is that radiation. When you're picking up radiation, you can be picking up the minutest of
That could
activity.
be negligible.
Negligible. And if you think the silver contains carbon, as in your little glass tube,
Yeah.
you've got other sources of carbon.
You've got
there,
because silver
potentially.
contains carbon, copper contains carbon.
So that carbon could merge to form the graphite. So you've got more carbon.
well, it would produce carbon dioxide. wouldn't
Oh,
it?
but it would produce carbon dioxide.
But they do have other they do produce other products of graphite where that sample isn't included in the mix, as it were. So they heat up their copper and their silver without the sample being present.
Yeah, so the top and bottom of this is that we think it's a very expensive way to determine whether something is old or new.
Yeah, basically,
Basically.
yeah, sure. Whereas what we really could do is just look at an article and think, well, there you go. That's.
Looks old to me.
I mean, when you think about Libby with his,
because another thing is that how can you get a piece of wood from a tomb, an Egyptian tomb? Say you get a piece of wood from an Egyptian tomb that's partly decayed or decomposed. You need to be able to get the same piece of wood from the same source,
from the same source, yeah,
from the same area,
yeah,
and you need to try it that way.
yeah,
To
absolutely,
compare
sure.
the two,
Yeah.
because their carbon 14s, on their understanding, you can have different variants of carbon 14 in the atmosphere.
Absolutely, yeah. Who knows? I mean,
Who
even
knows?
with people who promote this method of radiocarbon dating, these people are quite perturbed about the climate change and the CO2 emissions and all this lot, because that would have an effect on the carbon 14 that's in the atmosphere. But all that's just rubbish. But there's, fundamentally, it does seem to be quite plausible.
Sound.
It does seem to be sound. In other words, the older a material is, the less CO2 it would give off when it's burned, as opposed to
Basically, yeah.
something that's new. and basically they're using that as a gauge in order to ascertain or calculate
The age.
whether something's old or not.
But you're
Yeah.
not calculating the age. All
But-
you're calculating is the amount of CO2.
CO2,
it's
yeah,
gonna
sure,
give off.
absolutely, of course. But it does seem
So
to be
which is why that they've used known ages of certain materials
samples, sure.
as a guide to base their whole calculations of carbon dating.
Sure. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Sure. But I can't understand how these two samples taken from the tombs of two Egyptian kings, Zoser and Sneferu, were independently dated to 2625. I mean, how is that possible?
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
When carbon dating would have been more, according to modern day standards, that would have been more accurate.
yeah, I know.
You know, and I can't work it out. But anyway, that's radiocarbon dating. I don't think we need to.
No, I think that's about it. Really.
I think that's about it, really.
I think we will probably go into. We'll probably watch other videos about carbon dating. We'll look at other information, so
Sure.
we might find.
Absolutely. If we come across any other information about radiocarbon dating, we'll obviously let everyone know. But our verdict is that it does seem to be a plausible method.
Not to date things, but
Not to date things.
determine the amount of carbon dioxide or gas that's released
It would be
from
produced.
a product.
It would, that
From a
would
sample.
be produced from a sample. Yeah,
That's all.
basically, yeah, sure.
But then you have to determine that you have the same amount of copper oxide, the same amount of silver
Oh, sorry, yeah, that
within your tube.
One of the things we haven't mentioned, I'm sure, and that is if you're mixing substances with your CO2 that you've collected, you've got to be aware that that those substances have to be the same, have to have the same makeup in every single test run. They have to. If you've got more, say if you're using copper metal and
Yeah.
you use your CO2 and you heat up in every single one, that copper has to have the same amount of constituents in it in every single one.
Basically, yeah.
Otherwise, you'll get a variation of your CO2. wouldn't you?
Basically, yeah.
CO2
Yeah, in other
produced.
words, your materials all have to be of the same
And
consistency.
that's impossible to do.
Absolutely. So you can have variations in it.
That's why you will find why they use radioactivity, because radioactivity you can pick up the minuscule amounts of radioactivity. You can detect those, whereas you can't detect minuscule amounts of gas, CO2.
Yeah.
You can't do it. So they've basically they're using radiation in order to be able to measure how much CO2 is there.
Well, basically, yeah.
Yeah, basically, yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely, of course. So that's it, isn't
There
it?
we go, yeah.
So I
Get
think we've
thumb
done
out,
quite well
yeah.
today, haven't we? We haven't done too badly there.
Even though we've
Peter!
nearly done an hour and a half.
Nearly done an hour and a half. Wow. Wow, so there you go. And you thought you could date carbon 14. Well, you'd be very lucky indeed.
So in our understanding, the radiocarbon dating seems to be quite a sound process. But when it comes to carbon 14, well, just show us some carbon 14.
Absolutely, of course, that exists naturally up in the atmosphere. You know, we'd love to see some. You know, if you've got any get any links or any information that actually proves or demonstrates carbon 14 to exist naturally, then please let us know.
Well, because why would you? The thing is that if they're looking for carbon 14 that's apparently meant to be in that piece of cloth,
Sure.
why don't they just pick up the radiation from it, the carbon 14?
I know, yeah. This is why.
from it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
You know,
And absolutely. Instead of burning the piece of cloth, they could actually just zap it with some radiation.
they could have taken a Geiger counter inside the tomb, the Egyptian tomb.
Absolutely, to detect all.
Yeah.
It's when they do, but it's like when they do radiocarbon date bone as well. Why don't they put the bone in your particle accelerator and just zap it with some voltage and just record how much radiation it gives off compared to another piece of bone that is fresh?
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, why do they need to be doing all this stuff? It's because they are literally fabricating their whole, understanding,
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Yeah, sure. Anyway, so that wraps us up for another video. Hope everyone liked it. Obviously, if you didn't like it, then it's tough shit, isn't it, really?
Absolutely,
But there you go. So always remember till next time. If something doesn't make sense, like carbon-14 being in the atmosphere and reacting with nitrogen-14.
No, the nitrogen, the cosmic radiation reacting with the nitrogen,
14.
creating nitrogen-14,
Which
then
then
reacts or
changes to carbon-14.
reacts with the oxygen to create carbon-14.
Or something like that, yeah.
Something
It's
like that.
all of that.
Fairy tale.
Or if you think there's a dome above the Earth, that protects us and keeps us locked in and, all this and prevents all of that water from gushing down on us.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'd have to go out and buy lots of umbrellas, wouldn't we?
Absolutely, yeah. Or
Of
even
course.
build an ark.
Or even stop. Yeah, I don't want to be building an ark, I don't want to be doing that at all.
Well, you might be able to carbon date it, won't you?
Oh, of course, yeah, it's possible we could carbon date the ark. Absolutely. Or if you thought that
Plants gave off, absorbed
Plants.
CO2 and need to release oxygen
in their natural environment, absolutely. Or if you ever think that there's oxygen and nitrogen and all these other things as constituents of the air. Absolutely, of course.
Yeah.
What else did we
Or
do?
we breathe in oxygen.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the soy. We breathe out CO2. Oh, Philip Miller. We breathe out CO2.
Yeah, Philip Miller.
And it's the CO2 that turns lime water milky. Well, it's really just the salt in our breath, exhaled breath condensate that comes out into solution in the calcium the lime water solution.
Absolutely. Or if you think that RGB makes up white light. Absolutely, of course. It's all nonsense, isn't it? Of course.
Yes. Okay.
So thanks ever so much, and we'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Ta-da.
The Earth isn't round, it's flat.
How do you know?
I've observed it in all my travels over Europe. It's flat. Everywhere it's flat.